So I feel like I've been doing all this like self-work and stuff, watching videos on YouTube, trying to get to the point where I'm moving through my healing journey. Because what I really didn't like about this narcissistic relationship was the fact that it came at a time where I had done so much work on myself to the point where I had transcended so many of my like life struggles, my whether you call it karma or just my traumas and stuff. I had transcended so much of that shit, and then they decided to sort of like make their way into the situation and sort of like stunt my healing, where really I feel like I haven't stopped my healing, and I feel like on a level it has triggered more healing just because of the bullshit I sort of like then dealt with it. But it's really on a level I wouldn't say like demonstrated to the universe where I am with the situation, as much as I was sort of overcome by the situation. I don't want to take away from all the healing that I've done, and obviously, more importantly than that, I don't want to take away from the fact that anyone, healed or not, can get themselves into these types of situations with these lunatics that just shoot their shot. And I'm not being funny. I'm not talking just relationship wise, just like abuse wise in any format. Do you know what I mean? You can just turn up to some random group somewhere, and then you'll get some bad eggs somewhere that's gonna just like try and like turn the whole group against you. At the end of the day, this comes down to flying monkeys. Yeah, flying monkeys of the narcissist. There is no reason to ever feel at a liberty to feel badly at flying monkeys that are so just as dysregulated as a narcissist, or they have no self um, reflection to the point where they're going to understand the dynamic that you're in at the moment. If they've gone out of their way to make you feel badly about yourself or to join a toxic person, that's really bad karma. And if that plays out in their personal life, you have to think that karma plays out either in the same way as the life as a narcissist. Therefore, it's just sort of, you know, integrates itself into the life of a toxic person. Otherwise, it's probably just going to be, it's probably going to be the same way realistically. Or if they're just a normal person, they're just deciding to join in for a little bit of a, social peer group level kind of boost, then that's going to come and bite you on the arse as well, and you'll probably be the next target of all that. As I say, flying monkeys aren't really a massive issue, so it comes down to just removing these people. But I feel like my agenda has really shifted though from trying to, because I was talking about in my podcast recently of having to navigate toxic people and people with personality disorders in life, and I feel like my energy has really shifted from it's shifted, but it's kind of, I would say it's just an expanding of my perception in situations where I am about keeping the peace. So obviously I will be less quick to not allow, to basically get in any sort of dynamic with a narcissist in the future. I think that was always my plan, but I did confess in my last podcast that I did make that active choice to be like, if I'm having a, sexual relationship with a person, if it's with a narcissist, so be it. I kind of made that choice to say, well, if they're easily targeted, if they're all over the dating apps, then I'm going to let that be what it is. Do you know what I mean? And I did make that choice myself, even though I understood the nature of narcissists and psychopaths and stuff like that. I made that choice, and it's bit me on the arse to a degree, yeah, on a level. I've learned some lessons. Anyway, that's enough about that situation. But I think when it comes down to dealing with those situations, I think it's important to have compassion to a level where it keeps you regulated, and you can set your boundaries to a point where it's like, these people are human beings. Yeah, they're kind of distorted, they are dysfunctional and all that type of stuff, but at the same time they are human beings, and past a point you don't have to deal with them. If you want to fluff them on a level or just avoid them, ignore them, I think one thing it's taught me is don't be afraid to be the same to people as they are to you on a level, because first of all they will think nothing of ignoring you, scapegoating you, being rude to you, neglecting you, taking things from you, stealing from you, this, that and the other. They will think nothing of doing that. So if you have to do those things to those people, I wouldn't say that's the best port of call, just because it's like, don't taint your own heart just because someone else is disordered. But on the same level, like, what it's also shown me is the fact that is the fact that in childhood, if you are associated with these people, if you're raised by psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists, you will probably find that your belief system lies in the wounding that they had to create for you, for them to feel dominant, superior, and in control. And when I noticed that, I sort of backwards journaled and I was like, well, what is a narcissist like? So if a narcissist is like, because all of these things were coming up where like, I fear abandonment, or like, I fear someone acting nice to me in one aspect, like how a narcissist does, they act nice to you in front of people, but behind closed doors, they're a real cunt. That's exactly what happens to a narcissist. Like in public, when people have to deal with them, sometimes they get some nice words, sometimes people fawn them and fawn them, they fluff them and they tolerate them. Oh wow, Karen, it's great to hear about your cake sale today. Wow, I'm loving that for you, and people do this shit. But behind closed doors, no one, they probably don't have any friends. Do you know what I mean? Or people that they, genuinely care about them, besides other disordered people. And that's not real care and love. They're incapable of having real, genuine care and love. It has to be through a disordered lens, as I always say. We're not going to reassess narcissists and sociopaths now, but it's very much from the level where you have to look at it. Well, I have to look at it now to think. I did a whole podcast, as I say, which I'm going to listen back to actually, about how I don't want to see the life through the lens of a psychopath or a sociopath. And it's the fact that when you look at their wounds, they've probably created those within you, and so then you can look out for them, and you can sort of erase them from a level, but also not to give them the same things that they don't innately have. So if you're a child, for example, of a narcissistic parent, you being their child is not going to change their personality. I think this is what a lot of children of people with narcissistic parents tend to have. It's this ongoing hope that if you can fix them, everything will be better. But it's just it's not healthy to have, as I say, your inner child coping mechanisms. Though it's good to say that they were good at inner child coping mechanisms. As an adult, they're not going to serve you. Do you know what I mean? So it's it comes down to that, and with kind of the understanding, you're not going to then, so if you know that about a narcissist, or a sociopath or a psychopath or anything like that, that they are going to be ignored by the vast majority of people, apart from in situations that it really suits the person to just fob them off a bit, you can do that, and you can save your honest, true, genuine soul and your honest, true, genuine interactions for people that you know can receive it. And I think it depends. I think everyone goes about their healing path separately. I knew that on a core level, just obviously from, common sense and feeling on one degree. But when I really started to do the healing work, I really realised how cold and little amount of time sometimes these people have for genuine, authentic, empathic conversation. And it's really near non-existent in people's lives. Obviously for the reason that they're just incapable of experiencing that. But it's so that sort of leads you to think, okay, well, I'm validated in not wanting to have these sort of interactions with these people, or hope for these interactions with these people. But it's not even not hoping for it. It's like genuinely going out of your way to not have those interactions. They don't like intimacy anyway. As I say, I am very much on this journey at the moment of learning how to navigate life around these people. It's like not trying to expect from them anything else apart from what they are capable of in those levels. And I think what can be the problem sometimes is when you have CPTSD, when you have experiences where you don't look at the true wounding from yourself that you have had inflicted on you, that you may not even recognise is wounding, you may just think is part of your personality. You don't look for the patterns that show up in other people about where their wounding has happened, and you then treat them the same way as you've been sort of programmed to do. You find yourself being very drained, but I can only assume that after a period of time, you can get to the point where you don't feel that you actually have to do that anymore. And it's just another path on the healing journey of it all. and that is the kind of goal, I suppose. But yeah, you have to just take the knocks of life sometimes. And I think it's interesting how when you get where you really worry that you would end up, you can sort of look at it and just be like, this too shall pass. And, you do neutralize again. You know, my goal in a lot of my experiences through my healing journey and everything like that has been to do with finding neutral. Yeah, and this is often when you get kind of like delusional narcissists that don't understand what their set point is, their neutral is, and they're like, oh, well, I can be this super ultra positive person, and I can be this ultra empathic kind person, and it's like, okay, well, I don't believe that, but then, as I say, they have to learn on their own. But um, you know, when you see a person's set point, I would say go with it, even if they don't understand it themselves. There's a lot of people I think that you'll see in life that really don't understand their lack of capacity for these situations, and you have to just carry on, lead the situation, and just not give them the what they want in that level. Not to say you're not going to just treat them as you've learned, and without those things that will have been inflicted on you, because otherwise you're just repeating the cycle. You are re-inflicting pain and trauma on yourself, and people don't even realize they're doing it. This is the problem. And then you're triggered by the nearest narcissist or sociopath or psychopath, and you think, why am I so triggered? And it's like, because often as well, people see wounds in you that you don't even see in yourself, and then when you're interacting with them, it's like they will play on those wounds, or you'll think, oh, but I'm acting so polite to this person, I'm really trying to navigate their personality disorder, and yet I'm still enraged by the experiences I'm having. And it's like, probably because there's more wounds in there to look at. But yeah, I'll do more videos on things like this. I mean, I could just look at a couple of examples I have of this that I came up with in my journaling session yesterday, because I think they are quite good, and considering I do videos about narcissistic recovery, I will talk about them. So, so it's when you have the belief system that like you are bad, and sometimes this comes up in journaling, even from your logical mind. This is more comes from your programming brain, or even potentially your reptilian brain, if you've sort of like, I think mainly it's your middle brain, your sort of unconscious, so not necessarily your frontal lobe. So you can know logically you're not a bad person, but you can have like the belief systems around these type of things. You've got to think, what is the feedback that a narcissist will receive? That they are a bad person. So what do they do to you? They create this wound. Oh, look, I'm not a bad person, you're a bad person. Yeah. And then you like have to I always talk about the crappy childhood fairy, who deals with PTSD. So you find where your fears are and why you resent your fears, and then it helps deal with PTSD. So I'm like, okay, well, I resent this because I did not deserve this. Boom, processed. I'm at fear of physical attack because other people physically attack narcissists some of the time because they are so insufferable. Verbal aggression. Narcissists are verbally aggressive, and therefore they become not verbally aggressive to other people. Sociopaths, psychopaths, all that type of stuff. They're verbally aggressive. They become verbally aggressive with other people, and people become verbally aggressive with them. Being ignored when I need help. Narcissists will cry wolf a lot of the time. They make up lies. They create circumstances where they're the victim, and I think this is a lot of the time where they become ignored for the problems that they show up in. And then they sort of create this in other people with genuine problems that aren't going to. This is what I really found when I started healing from mental health issues, to be honest, is that I'm really valid within my trouble, within my belief systems, within what's bothering me, within where my wounding is, and they don't. Narcissists will not validate that for you. Yeah, they will. And if you're raised by narcissists, you may not have this belief system because you think that either you you've been ignored when you need help, or because of sadism within them and stuff, or whether they just they don't receive that, so they don't feel that you need to receive that. People that aren't overly eccentric and victims, perpetual victims within themselves, your problems are valid. Being neglected by others. Narcissists are neglected by others because they are neglectful to people in general. Yeah, it becomes from their incompetence. Yeah, and so therefore there's no point trying to not neglect a narcissist. As I say, I don't think it's worth going out of your way to neglect people, but it's like, if someone is neglectful and they receive neglect from everyone, why are you going out your way to include them in a situation, not neglect them, or to not ignore them, when they would not go out their way to do this for you? Realistically, it just comes down to the quality of care that you have within other people, within if you're an empathic person, is not going to be met the same as with I think one thing I did touch on in my podcast, to be fair, is the fact there is a difference between going about my life and sort of like in a sense seeing life through my empathic, energized lens, and not really worrying about other people being like, okay, well, I have to ignore you, I have to this, that, and the other, because realistically you're not, unless you're genuinely interacting with a person, it doesn't really matter. But it's so not important to go out of your way and not neglect a narcissistic person, because they are neglectful by nature. Why are you giving them what they haven't given to you? And I don't think it's good to look at life through a sociopathic lens or a transactional lens necessarily. But realistically, if you're not, I would say be careful of looking at life through a narcissistic or sociopathic lens, because you may cut yourself short and start doing those things to yourself that, really, if you're dealing with yourself, if you're interacting with yourself, it's okay to not focus on, to focus on not neglecting yourself, fearing not being attuned to. A lot of people don't attune to narcissists because their level of resonation is unstable, it's uncomfortable. People don't like being on that level because it's full of shame and fear and resentment and anger and fear. It's a very sad place and vibration to be a lot of the time. So people don't attune to them. So often, narcissistic parent won't attune to you, a narcissistic relationship won't attune to you, and then you don't necessarily learn to attune to yourself. And it's really important to attune to yourself. Especially and you'll find if you're an empathic or a positive person, it's a beautiful, beautiful. It was the best thing I ever learned to do, was attune to myself. I don't think I've attuned to myself in all ways, to be honest. I probably have more parts of myself to attune to, but I think in the main, especially as an adult, to attune to myself is a beautiful thing, because I have a beautiful vibration. Do you know what I mean? So that's most of them. Having what is said disregarded. But often people will disregard what a narcissist says because they know it's all often lies. So you have to listen to what your own self has to be. A lot of it is working with yourself. As I say, I'm very much on this mission of navigating the world within toxic people, and that's one thing. But it's the fact that yourself is the most important part of this recovery, because when you're comfortable within yourself, it's to say that you won't let, and this is where you find the true way that it all fits together, to be honest, as a healed person psychologically and stuff. It's one thing giving all these things to yourself and understanding where all your wounding parts are, when you can match that with the logic of, okay, I actually don't need to go out my way to blow hot air up a narcissistic person's arse. I don't need to even acknowledge their existence, because they ignore the vast majority of people. It takes away so much effort that you're wasting with these people, and hopefully you'd like to think that it means that you attract less of them, because there's a lot of things that I don't do with narcissists that I used to do. I used to just work on my own damage programming, but I don't do that anymore. But I'm working to continue to not do that. But nonetheless, sometimes like life does just bring them in, and you feel infiltrated by them to one degree or another. But there is a logical way out of it all. Thank God. And it comes down to understanding your own inner child wounding. I believe a lot of the time, or even inner adult wounding, to be able to understand what parts of those things are you and what parts of those things have been inflicted by other people. And this comes down to the laws of physics, realistically. Why are you going to treat someone else, even especially when they fear intimacy? Imagine, they have lived all of their life experiences, if you believe in past life, all of their past life experiences as this type of person. They haven't got high levels of ability to connect with people on intimate levels. This is why they fear intimacy, because they can't navigate it. They're very wounded people. They become wounded very easily, so they haven't really got the resilience for deep kind of intimate relationships. They're very surface level all the time. So it's not even worth trying to be nice to them. In a lot of ways, it's better to just let them go about their existence. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, but it's important on a level, because it is important to know how to interact with these people, especially when you've grown up in a life where you're sort of brainwashed into thinking that the narcissist is this being that they think that they are, and then it's for an adult to go, oh, do you know what, okay, I was literally brainwashed by a toxic person, and I have my own perception. Not only my own perception, I have non-disordered perception, one would hope, to the point where I don't need to be doing all these ridiculous things that a narcissist would do, or train you to do, in order to keep themselves comfortable in their disorder. That is not your burden to bear at this point. So I'm just going to leave it there. Thanks for listening.